I'm so excited. Also, as usual, if there's any background noise or anything, I apologize if I end up not being able to cut it out. So yeah, let's just get right back into it. I just stared at him, dumbfounded. What was this old bat saying? What? You can't be serious, right? I managed to blurt out. He just tilted his head in response. Why not? For one thing, I'm a human. Is it even allowed to have humans in this kingdom? Also, I need to make sure my family is okay and tell them I'm still alive, I refuted. At this, the grandpa went silent as he pondered a little bit before speaking again. Living here isn't a problem as long as you're under my name. As for your parents, Brad isn't an absolute necessity to meet them in person. It was my turn to ponder this time. I mean, I guess it isn't strictly a necessity for me to meet my parents in person. Although I miss them, the most important thing is finding out how they're doing and letting them know that I'm fine if they are as well, I answered. Then come with me tomorrow morning. Be outside the manor by 6 in the morning sharp. Before he turned to leave, I stopped him. Wait, I don't get why you want me as your disciple. Also, you sound awfully hurried. Isn't it possible for me to go back home and spend a bit of time with my parents before coming back here to train under you? I want you to be my disciple because I see your potential, kid. An uncountable number of people had asked me to take them in as their disciple, from rich to poor, from young to old. But do you know how many I've taken in so far? None. These new generation brats bore me. Just because some wealthy noble brat's parents thought their kid was special, they thought they were qualified to ask me to be their mentor. I just furrowed my brows, not knowing where Tessa's grandpa was going with this. You're different. I know you have exceptional talent in mana manipulation, and only God knows how, but you possess better technique than even I. But that isn't the reason why I decided on teaching you. Brad, I need to ask you, how are you a beast tamer? Any sort of amusement that had been on his face previously was all but gone as his sharp facial features emitted a deadly gaze. Beast tamer? What are you talking about? I was really confused. Although it was getting well into the night and the elder had already sent Tess to sleep, it didn't seem like this conversation was going to end soon. Let's go back inside and talk, he said, leading me to a living room with couches and a roaring fireplace. Sitting down on a couch, he continued, let's start from the beginning. I assume you know that mana beasts possessed mana cores, just like humans, elves, and dwarves, right? I nodded at this. Right. Just like mana beasts, humans, elves, and dwarves possess qualities in their mana cores that are distinct to their own race. He picked up a piece of paper and began drawing a chart. 1. Water dash ice. 1. Plant. 1. Earth dash gravity. 1. Magma, comma, metal. 1. Fire dash lightning. 1. Wind dash sound. These are the 4 basic elements and their higher forms. The higher forms, ice, metal, lightning, and sound, can only be controlled by mages, especially adept at a particular basic element, i.e. a deviant. This is where the distinct racial qualities lie. He wrote down each race as he recited a brief description. Humans. Human mages possess the ability to manipulate all 4 basic elements and are the only race capable of having deviants that can control the higher form of their adapt element. They also have deviants that can even transcend the 4 basic elements, like healers, making their mana cores the most diverse. Elves. Elven mages can only manipulate water, wind, and earth, but with much higher affinity. We also have a special trait distinct to our race that allows very pure-blooded mages to control plants. However, elves don't have deviants that can manipulate water, wind, and earth into their higher forms. Dwarves. Dwarven mages can only manipulate earth and fire, but, like elves, they possess a much higher affinity to those 2 elements. Their distinct trait lies lies in the fact that all dwarves are able to mold and bend metal. While some deviants possess the special ability to manipulate both earth and fire into magma, something even human deviants are not able to do, much less elves. However, they can only manipulate those two basic elements, and like elves, do not possess the ability to control the higher form of the basic elements. Wait, I'm not getting all this. Why can't humans manipulate plants and magma? I asked while reading his handy info chart. Good question. Only elves can manipulate plants, which is the only form of nature that is alive, because of our lineage being highly affinitive to the nurturing elements. Only the dwarf race can manipulate magma and metal because, like us elves, their lineage makes them highly adept to the constructing elements. I started subconsciously rubbing the bridge of my nose as my brain whirled. Okay, I get the differences between the three races, but what does that have to do with me being a beast tamer? What does that even mean anyway? I'm getting to that, Brad, he barked. And beasts are different from the three humanoid races because each species has their own special characteristics. Listing all of them will be endless, so I'll give you a simple example. Mages, adventurers, or not are classified E, D, C, B, A, AA, S, and SS class. This classification is the same for mana beasts as well. Take the Sonic Hawk. They are B-class beasts that possess incredible speed while in flight. They all have the affinity for wind and sound. These attributes are innate in their mana cores. Regardless of their affinity, if these mana cores are taken out and given to a human or elf mage that specialize in the wind element, their training will go by much faster than just cultivating mana from their surroundings, but that's it. I impatiently waited as Elder Varian gulped down a glass of water before continuing. However, when a mana beast reaches A class or higher, they have the ability to pass on their will, or ability to be more precise, to one person. I called you a beast tamer earlier because you have a mana beast will in your mana core, and from my estimation, not just any will, but an S-class mana beast will, if not a double S-class will. I'm only able to sense this because I'm a beast tamer as well, although the beast's will that I tamed was a double A-class beast, the Shadow Panther. So that's how he was so unusually fast. Noticing the look of revelation on my face, Elder Varian just chuckled. Yes, Brad, I was able to bully you that badly by utilizing my Shadow Panther's will, but I only used around 50% of my speed. He shot me a wink. He was able to go even faster. What the hell? Everything was beginning to make sense. The strange, faint markings that appeared on my mana core after Sylvia gouged through it, and how she said my future progress would depend on understanding her power. My eyes welled up with tears as I lowered my head, trying to keep them from falling. You must have been through a lot, child. I'm not going to push you for an answer, but the reason why it is urgent for me to guide you is because you don't have much time, he said in a warm but stern voice. What do you mean? I sniffled, looking up at him. The power from your mana core is too strong for your immature body to handle. Let me ask you this, boy. Have you recently felt a burning pain coming from your mana core? The look on my face must have confirmed his suspicions because he nodded solemnly. If you don't learn to control your new mana core, it'll destroy your body. His eyes looked straight at me, dissolving any doubt I may have had. I understand. It seems I have no choice but to be under your guidance. However, I don't think I would be able to focus on training without making sure that my family is alright, and that they know I'm safe too. You mentioned something about that earlier, I said, trying to keep my emotions under control. Just call me Grandpa from now on. My first disciple should at least be able to call me that. And who knows, maybe I'll become your grandpa-in-law. He shot me another wink. He chuckled as my eyes widened in response before continuing. We'll go see an old friend of mine tomorrow that'll take care of your worries. What I need from you starting now is your utmost diligence. Even I'm not sure how long it'll take for you to master the basics basics of your beast's will. In my 200 years of living, I've never seen such a young mage, let alone a beast tamer at that. You're going to bring big changes into this world, Brad. I just know it. I just scratched my cheek, my face hot from embarrassment. Go to sleep now, Brad. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. You'll need the rest. I got up and bowed before wishing him good night. Good night, Grandpa. He chuckled, waving me off, and I plopped into my bed, too tired to even get under the covers. Oh my god, I love this so much. What I really like about the novel is so the comic didn't like remove a whole bunch of detail, but they kind of like summarized a lot of stuff. Whereas with the novel, they just full on like explain like the ranking system and whatnot. And if I'm not mistaken, the comic never actually went full in depth about that, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, Arthur's got a beast will in his court. It's so cool. Oh my god, I can't. I'm too excited. Okay, I need to shut up and just go to the next part. Okay. Chapter 30, Q&A Part 2. I roused from my sleep, grunting, feeling a heavy sensation weighing down on my body. Were they my worries, my burdens, the expectations placed on me? Are these weighing down on me even as I slept? Good morning, Art. Wake up. I opened my eyes and see that my burdens had taken the form of a lovely young lady, very similar in appearance to my friend Tess. Come on, sleepyhead. You need to meet Grandpa soon. Hey, don't go back to sleep. She bounced up and down, still straddled on top of me. Did she not know how indecent this may look to others? The innocence of youth. I get it. I'm up, Tess. Please get down from my stomach so I can get up. I groaned, still half asleep. Hey, Art, your hair looks funny. Hey, is it true you're going to be staying here for a while? Grandpa told me this morning. I'm so happy. You're really staying, right? Right? Tess exclaimed with a wide smile pasted on her cute face. How the hell was she so energetic this early in the morning? Trying to tame my bed hair, I responded, we'll know for sure after my trip with Elder Varian. But most likely it seems I'll be bothering you for a bit longer, Princess. She stabbed my side with her finger, not Princess, Tess, Tess. I'm going to get upset if you don't treat me better. Damn it, she looks so cute with her pouting face. Alright, I'll have to shower and get ready, so unless you want to see me naked, I think you should leave the room, Tess. I waggled my eyebrows lewdly. Eek, I'm leaving, you pervert. I could see her ears turn scarlet as she scurried out of the room. I didn't think that'd work so well. My 4-year-old body hadn't even fully matured in any of its manly parts anyhow. I just shrugged and hopped into the shower to get ready, making sure to keep the feather-wrapped stone inside my robe. As I made my way down the flight of curved stairs, a butler opened the front door for me and I spotted a small carriage with Grandpa Varian and Tess inside. Father, it is not appropriate for a human to be residing within this kingdom. Alduin is right, Elder Varian. Although saving Tessie is something I will forever be grateful for, having a human stay here goes against all traditions. I heard the king and queen talking to Grandpa Varian as he lazily leaned back inside the carriage. Bah, screw traditions. I've taken a liking to the brat and so has Tessie, haven't you, child? He snorted. Grandpa, it's not like that. He's just, her voice trailed off at the end, face glowing. Ha. Anyways, he's going to be under my direct guidance from now on, so make sure to let everyone know that he is not to be trifled with. Father, enough. This is not up for discussion. Oh, Brad, you're here. Come, we should hurry. Its expression changed into a smile immediately after seeing me. I nodded and hopped into the carriage, avoiding the frowns that the king and queen were giving me. I love Varian so much, man. It's literally one of my favorite characters. A little into the journey, I asked Grandpa Varian, Hey Gramps, where are we headed anyway? You said we were meeting a friend of Tessie looked at his sleeping granddaughter. What do you mean? Well, growing up as the only princess of an entire kingdom is very stressful. Too much for a child to handle. Growing up with no close friends, it was hard on her. She had gotten hurt too many times by people pretending to befriend her only to use her for their personal gains. This has made Tessie into someone cold and distant to those around her. Imagine how surprised we all were when we saw you two holding hands, he continued. Yeah, I noticed when I heard her talk to the guards, I added. Arthur, Tessie has shown more expression, more smiles and laughs now than she ever had growing up. Around you, she finally seems more like a child. For that, I thank you. He patted my other shoulder. This was the first time Grandpa Varian ever initiated physical contact with me outside of sparring, which caught me by surprise. The carriage came to a gentle halt before the driver opened our carriage door to inform us of our arrival. Hey Tess, we're here, I whispered, gently nudging her. She eventually stirred awake and we got out of the carriage, arriving at what could only be considered a dainty hut. Hey, you old witch, come out, Grandpa Varian suddenly yelled while knocking on the door. Suddenly, the door flew open to reveal a hunched elderly lady with gray hair that seemed like it was struck by lightning, and wrinkled eyes that were strangely a mixture of multiple colors, all blending together. Dressed in a simple brown robe, she peered down at me with a studying eye. Took you long enough to get here, she scowled. Ha ha ha. Arthur, let me introduce you to Renia Darkasson. She's a very special deviant amongst elves, Grandpa Varian announces. It's good to see you again, Varian. Charming as always, little Tessia, she smiled, patting Tessa's head. Looking at me, she stuck out her hand. We finally meet young Arthur. I'm Renia. I'm a diviner. Another really good character. Oh my god. I love Renia. She's really cool, and her powers are interesting. Okay. Next is Chapter 31, What's to Come, Part 1. Grandpa Varian, Tess, Renia, and I were currently all situated around a circular table with a jar of water in the middle. Elder Renia, you said that you were a diviner, correct? I'm a little lost as to what it is you can do. Gramps said that I'd be able to find out if my parents are okay by seeing you. I said, staring curiously at the jar of water. Gramps, huh? Varian, you really let yourself go if you're letting youngsters like him call you that, she snickered. Bah, he's an exception. If any other brat dares to call me something like Gramps, I'll have them hung upside down and beaten with a cactus. He grinned back, looking at me. How painfully descriptive. Glaring at me, she barked, Brat, you don't even know where your parents are, but you want to travel all over Sapin, find them, and then come back to train. You'd be already dead by the time you made yourself back here. I looked at Grandpa Varian. Did he tell her? Almost as if he knew what I was thinking, he chuckled. I didn't tell Renia any of this. There isn't much you can hide from her, but she usually doesn't bother looking into a person. What made you so nosy, Renia? Gramps said, directing a worried gaze towards the elderly lady. You and I both know he's special. So special, in fact, that there are parts of his life that even I can't see. Arthur, whatever the beast that passed its will onto you was, it was not an ordinary beast. Limiting it to an SS class wouldn't give it justice. She pondered for a bit before continuing. And was sitting on flipped back as I bolted up, leaning as close to the table as possible. I saw my mother and father together, sitting around a dining table. It didn't seem to be our home in Ashburn. My mother's face was a bit paler, and she was currently saying something to my father. I could see she'd lost a bit of weight, but otherwise she looked pretty healthy. And her stomach. It's pretty evident now that she was pregnant by the fairly noticeable bulge of her belly. And my father looked the same. He was wearing some kind of uniform now, though, and was sporting a beard. I could feel hot tears running uncontrollably down my face at this point, as I didn't dare peel my eyes off the image of my parents. They're alive. They're doing okay. They're fine. Thank you, Elder Renia. Thank you truly for showing me this. I managed a sniffled stammer. She looked a little uncomfortable at my sincerity and just waved it off. Let me see where they are now. The image zoomed out and I could see the outside of where they were living. Just as I had suspected, it was definitely not our home in Ashburn. Zooming out even more, I could see the layout of the city they were staying in. It seems like they've made their home in Cyrus. That makes things simpler for us, she said, a content look on her face. Tess, obviously worried about my crying, was patting my back, but her gaze didn't leave the swirling water. Art's parents, I faintly heard her mumble. Grandpa Varian clapped his hands together and stood up. Okay, Arthur, let's let your parents know that you're alive. According to Grandpa Varian, strict regulations controlled communications between the kingdoms of Eleanor and Sapin. However, Renia, being a diviner not discovered by the kingdom of Sapin, allowed us a certain unregulated freedom in a sense. How this process will work is that I will pour some of my innate mana into you, establishing a temporary link. When I give you the signal, start speaking as if you're talking to your parents. It's important to know that they will hear your voice inside their heads, so they may not believe what you're saying at first. Make sure you get them to believe that it is really you that's speaking to them, and that they're not going crazy. Remember, we're just doing this to let them know you're still alive. I'm going to emit your voice directly into both their parents' minds. I can't keep the connection up for long, so say what you need to within 2 minutes, she asserted, a serious gaze in her eyes. Nodding at this, I prepared myself as well. Begin now. Her whole body began glowing the same color as her eyes, and I could see the same glow spreading to me as well. Taking a deep breath, I started talking. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad. It's me, your son, Arthur. You're probably really surprised that you're hearing my voice inside your head, huh? Well, there's a reason for that. Before that, though, I want you to know that I'm alive and safe. Again, I'm alive and well, Mom, Dad. I managed to survive the fall off the cliff, and I'm currently living in the kingdom of Eleanor with the elves. Please don't tell anyone else this. I don't have much time, so I'll only say the things most crucial. A friend of mine is a deviant like you, Mom, except she's a diviner, so I was able to see how you guys are doing just now as well. She is also the one that is allowing you guys to be able to hear my voice. I want to go back to you guys as soon as possible, but I can't right now. No, I'm safe and alive right now, but I have a sort of illness inside my body that I need to get rid of before I'm able to go back. Don't worry, as long as I stay here and have the elves treat me, I'm 100% okay. So please don't worry. I don't know when I'll be able to talk to you guys like this again, but what's important is that I'm alive and I know you guys are as well. Dad, Mom, both of you guys should be hearing my voice right now, so confirm it with each other if you still can't believe this. Remember, don't tell anyone where I am right now. Better yet, just keep it as if I was still dead to make things simpler. It may take months or even years for me to be able to go back, but just be sure that I will be going back home. I love you guys so much, and I miss you. Stay safe, and Dad, make sure to keep Mom and my baby siblings safe. Mom, please make sure Dad doesn't get into trouble. Your son, Art. My heart. Oh my God. like, he's a dude that's already lived his own life, but he's still super attached to his new parents, and it's so evident, and it's so nice. Oh my god. Sorry for all the background noise and stuff. I'm recording this like in the middle of the day. I had trouble keeping my eyes open from the tears that continuously poured down. I simply stood silently, rubbing my eyes as I did all I could from breaking down. The glow faded around both of us, and Elder Renia collapsed back into her chair, sweating and pale. Elder Renia, I don't know how to thank you for this, I managed to croak out. Train well and continue to cherish those close to you, child. That's how you'll thank me. Also, don't forget to drop in once in a while. This grandma here gets lonely. She answered with a weak smile. I gave her a tight hug, making her almost jump. She eventually succumbed to my cuteness and hugged me in return before shooing all of us away. While we were walking out, I noticed Tess pouting a little, looking at my chest. Interesting. Oh my god. It's so good. I love Arthur so much. Okay. Chapter 32, What's to Come, Part 2. Also, I noticed, before I get started, I noticed that, like, in the comic, like, they showed his parents reacting to, like, what he was saying, but in here, I guess they didn't really have a way to show that without doing, like, a separate point of view type of thing, but, oh well. By the time we arrived back at the castle, it was already dark. A maid greeted us on arrival, but before I had the chance to go back to my room, I saw the king and queen. The king came up to me first. Arthur, I know you overheard what we were saying earlier today, and I apologize for that. Years of being a king has made me a bit old-fashioned, and I was unreasonably stubborn on you not belonging here. The queen continued for her husband, holding my hands in hers. You are now Elder Varian's first disciple. This gives you more than enough reason for all of us to accept you. Even if that fact didn't exist, you still saved our daughter. Please consider this place your home. I know you miss your parents dearly, but if I can be of any consolation, don't hesitate to treat me as you would your own mother, she said, giving me a sincere smile. Papa, Mama, Tessa said with her hands covering her mouth. She then ran up to them and hugged them both. I smiled back, thanking them as well. They were good people that were simply looking out for their kingdom. Smiling behind us, Grandpa Varian nodded at all of us in approval before exclaiming, Brad, training starts tomorrow, so sleep early. I woke up from an immense pain covering my body. Cold sweat had already coated my body as the burning feeling intensifies. I clutched my body tightly. and meeting the royal family and Grandpa Varian, I couldn't help but think that Sylvia had somehow planned all of this out. Slowly release the mana out of your core and don't be tempted to use your mana channels. Instead, let it seep into your body and slowly have all your muscles and bones absorb the mana. This will take time and effort, but throughout this process, your mana core should reject your body less and less. Varian instructed. There isn't much I can help you with for the first part of your training, except making sure your mana is distributed evenly throughout your body and relieving you whenever your body spasms like earlier. Training continued on with me meditating, dispersing the mana out of my core and into my body. I had gotten the hang of it after a few days, but I realized how long of a journey this would be. Directing my mana to form a core when I was an infant took a couple of years, but this was doing the exact opposite, except with more mana and the extra step further of assimilating the mana directly into the muscles and bones. I didn't leave the castle because I wouldn't know when my body would act up again. I was really grateful for Grandpa Varian for sticking by me throughout this time. Unfortunately for Tess, this left her with very little time to play with me. When I wasn't meditating, I was resting in my room, my body aching from being imbued with mana. However, that didn't stop her from simply barging in and chattering on about her day. After several weeks of assimilation, my body acted up less frequently, and I was allowed to go out into the city. So after promising Tess that I'd go touring around the city of Zestier, I went to sleep. Waiting outside my room was an adorably dressed Tess. She was wearing a white sleeveless sundress and a white sheer cardigan over it. The light pink colored sun hat she wore over her head was decorated with a pale flower, giving her a very fresh and doll-like appearance. Took you long enough. Hurry, let's hurry. She grabbed my hand, half dragging me as I felt my aching body to keep up with her pace. Seeing the city once again didn't distill the amazement I had when I'd first arrived at Zestier. As we got off the carriage and started walking, we took time to visit the numerous stalls and stores the city had to offer. While the two of us were met with a lot of stares from the fact that a human child was holding hands with their kingdom's only princess, it was a feeling I was used to in my previous life, so it didn't bother me. What bothered me, however, was that while most of these cases only held curiosity, some stares were filled with blatant hostility. Coming out of the armor shop, I had just moved out of the way for someone when an elfin child bumped my shoulder. Well, if it isn't the human brat that Elder Varian has taken under. I've heard all about you. Gross, I got human germs on my clothes. He snidely remarked, a look of disgust pasted on his face. It was fairly obvious by the clothes of this child weeks of stifling meditation, my body was actually eager for the chance to fight. Princess, please do us the honor of initiating the duel, the noble Brett said as he began polishing his black wand with his sleeve. I could see Tess rolling her eyes as she took another step back. Let the duel commence. While my mana core was still in the early stages of dark red, I could feel mana strengthening every fiber of muscle I flexed as I dashed towards Favorith. It was over in a second. He was too cocky and didn't even take the necessary precautions to find out whether I was an augmenter or conjurer, and by the time I was within arm's length, he hadn't even begun his chant. As my palm sank into his gut, all he managed to let out was a sharp breath of air, forced out of his lungs, before flying back and tumbling on the floor. I was glad that I had used my palm, because as soon as my hand made contact, I felt the sturdy chainmail underneath his clothes. Favorite's attendants and friends' eyes grew wide as Tess quickly ran to me and pulled me away. Later, Tess explained to me that, in a duel, there were certain unsaid customs. One of these customs was to let the challenger make the first move. The other was that informal duels between nobles were only a demonstration of magic, not actual fighting. This got a good laugh out of Gramps when he found out, saying that the duels between nobles were utter foolishness and a completely inaccurate way to measure someone's magical prowess. All in all, what Favorith had meant when he initiated the duel was to simply take turns showing off each other's respective magic talent. It was disappointing to realize that the look of shock from everyone around us wasn't from my fighting prowess, but from the fact that I ignored the customs of the duel. Since then, I chose to stay in the manor most days, keeping myself out of trouble as I lived a rigorous lifestyle that consisted of meditating with Grandpa Varian in the morning, spending a little time with Tess in the afternoon, and training by myself at night. During this time, I sent messages to my parents every once in a while to let them know I was still alive and that I missed them dearly. Like this, 3 years passed. So now my boy is 7 years old? Yeah, because he was 4 when that happened, so yeah, he's 7 now. Oh, okay. So this is when they start doing other characters' point of view, because in the comic, it just went off like a comic does, but when I picked up from where the comic left off at the time and started reading the novel, they would occasionally do point of view chapters from other characters, which I thought was pretty interesting. And it looks like it's starting with this chapter, so I'm super excited. Okay, chapter 34, The Other Side, part 1. Reynold Leywin's POV. I couldn't believe it. My son was gone. No. Durden had to hold me back before I jumped off the cliff myself to save my son. Oh no. The doing from back when. Oh, this is so painful. Oh my god. I knew it was too late. I knew what could have happened had already happened, but I couldn't just stand still not doing anything. Let me go. My son, he could still be alive. Let me save my son, please. Durden wasn't budging and Adam came to help him hold me back. Please, Ray, you have to hold it together. There's no easy way to tell you this, but it is impossible for him to have survived that fall. The always playful and lax Adam had a solemn expression on his face and couldn't even meet my eyes. Adam is right. Pull yourself together. Your wife needs you, Ray, Durden also muttered. They're right. They're absolutely right. Yet why is my body not listening to me? Why can't I go comfort my wife? I broke down before everything went black. Waking up, I noticed Ellen holding a wet towel over my head. You're finally awake, she said, a sympathetic smile on her face that lacked confidence. I ignored her and sat up, burying my face into my hands. This isn't a dream, is it? Please tell me I'm going to wake up to see my boy playing with Jasmine and Adam. Okay, none of this was shown in the comic, but I already like it so much. Because, like, we never really got to see Durden do a whole bunch in, like, the comic, especially around the time when Arthur was lost. So this is really good. It's interesting. I like it. But it's also so painful. I didn't know that Alice had tried to kill herself. Like, I didn't know any of this had happened. Oh my god. This was the first time I had seen the usually composed Durden this infuriated. I managed a stiff nod, my brain still throbbing from the hit, as I made my way to my wife's tent. I spotted my wife curled up under a blanket with Angela by her side, patting her gently. I gave a meaningful look to Angela. Understanding what I wanted, she simply nodded before excusing herself out of the tent. Alice. Honey, can I see my wife's beautiful face? Child, I faintly heard her mumble. What was that, honey? I responded, patting her back. I killed our child. She bolted up and turned to face me. I killed our son Reynolds. It was my fault. If I wasn't there, he could have dodged that. He could have lived. He sacrificed himself to save me. It was my fault. I pulled my wife toward me and held her tight, softly kissing the top of her head over and over. I kept my eyes tightly shut, keeping myself from crying as she continued sobbing into my chest. We just sat like that for a while until her sobs turned into dry whimpers. You don't hate me. I was barely able to hear her whisper. How could I ever hate you? Alice, I love you, and I always will. Oh, my heart. I miss him so much, Ray. She began sobbing again. I clenched my jaws, willing myself to stay strong in front of my wife. I know, honey. I miss him too. The rest of the journey was a slow and arduous one. Not physically, no. I felt like even the wild animals knew of our emotional torment as they steered clear of us. Our group advanced in quiet. Any of Adam's attempts at trying to lighten up the move was met with a crushing silence. Even the cheerful Angela bore a solemn face throughout the rest of the journey. Alice and I fell asleep together last night in each other's arms. I managed to console her, and it helped me as well. I needed an excuse. I was the one that had sent Arthur to protect Alice. I kept trying to find people to blame, but the ones that were actually at fault were already killed. Revenge had already been taken. Now all I was left with this dark hole of emptiness and regret. The only thing that was keeping Alice and me sane was our unborn child. For that child, my child, I had to endure. I wasn't going to make the same mistake I had made with Arthur. He was only a child, but I had sent them off to protect my wife against fighters and even a mage. I had no one to blame but myself. Okay, like, I get that he's blaming himself, but in that situation there wasn't really much else he could have done. I don't know. I mean, I guess the grief of having lost their first child is just too much for them. Like, I get that. Oh, this is heavy. We arrived at the floating city of Cyrus through the teleportation gate with no further complications, as though God was mocking us by saying we've been through enough. The twin horns were supposed to separate from my wife and I from here. You guys sure you'll be okay? Adam gave us a rare concerned look. Durden added, we don't mind staying with you for a couple more days. I know you originally came to the city for Arthur, but he never finished the sentence. It's okay. You guys have your agenda. Alice and I have all of our basic necessities and money to live off of for a couple of weeks. Keep your guys' position updated in Guildhall. I waved them all, trying to force a smile. Will do. Take care, you two. We'll see each other soon, Durden replied, hugging the both of us. The girls also gave Alice a warm hug after saying their goodbyes to her. After they left, I turned to my wife, giving her a serious look. Alice, what do you say about living here from now on? Giving me a confused look, she replied, what about our home in Ashbur? We just got it all fixed up. a lot of our stuff is still there. I shook my head at this. I think it'll be better for us to have a fresh new surrounding. Our home in Ashburn has too many memories of art. I don't think we'll be able to get over it if we stay there. We'll hire some merchants to deliver our stuff from Ashburn here to us. She looked down as she decided, before giving me a small nod. What about a job? How will he afford to live here? This is a very expensive city to live in, Ray. She added, a worried look on her face. For once I was able to muster up a real smile. A sincere smile that seems so rare these days. I know an old friend that lives here. He's asked me to be his guard numerous times years back, and we still keep in touch from time to time. He's a fairly renowned merchant in this area and has a large manor. I'm sure he'll have a place for us to stay. They're good people, Alice. She looked a little doubtful at first, but after arriving at the manor and seeing me hug my old friend, her worries lessened. Yeah, this is a lot heavier than I thought it was gonna be. Oh my god. Like I was hoping that they would do something like this, but at the same time it hurts so much. Oh, it hurts. Okay. Now we're on chapter 35, The Other Side, part 2. Ray, my friend, the hero who saved my life, what brings you to this little city? A thin, bespectacled man in a suit exclaimed as he let go of me, patting my arms. Vincent Elstia, around 1.7 meters in height with a thin frame for a body. I don't know how much that is in inches. He was a man of brains, not brawn. Vincent was a normal human, but a very successful one at that. The Elstia house had been in the trading business for generations. While their family had been on the decline for a few generations, Vincent single-handedly brought his family's assets to an all-new high after building the first Hestia auction house in Cyrus, and later building several auction houses within neighboring cities. Yup. We had met when he was on one of his trips to a more remote city to build an auction house when he ran into trouble with bandits. I was there with him at the time, fulfilling the escort mission the guild had assigned me. After saving him, we hit it off pretty well. The maid that answered the door left after she saw Vincent hugging me. Soon after, his wife and daughter came out as well, curious to what all the commotion was about. Tabitha, meet my dear friend Reynolds, and his wife Alice. Alice Reynolds, this is my wife Tabitha, and this here lovely lady is my daughter Lilia. Vincent exclaimed, picking up his daughter. She looked to be around the same age as Art was, with lovely hazel eyes that reminded me of a kitten, and long brown hair braided. My heart ached as I thought about how beautiful a young lady she'd grow up to be in the future. A future she still had. Oh my god. Oh, don't do this to me, Ray. Don't do this to me. Okay. Forcing myself away from my dark thoughts, I greeted myself. Tabitha, it's great to finally meet you. Vince told me so many great things about you during our trip together to Elshire City. What a cute daughter you have. After my wife introduced herself in exchanged pleasantries with Tabitha, Vincent urged us into the living room to get comfortable. So what brings you here, Ray? Last time you sent me a letter, you said you got yourself settled all the way up in Ashburn, he said, handing Alice and me a glass of wine. I took a deep breath and told him the story through gritted teeth. I had no idea. I'm so sorry for your loss, Vincent managed to mutter. His wife covered her mouth with her hands. I wouldn't know what to do if I lost Lilia. Is there anything I could do for you? At that, I awkwardly scratched my cheek and asked, you asked me several times to teach your auction house's guards a thing or two about magic. Is that offer still up in the air? If it is, you would be doing me a huge favor. I really just need enough to rent a small house around here and live a simple life. It's just myself situated in the left wing in the manor. Vincent was more than lenient, saying we could have a couple of rooms in case we want any more babies in the future. Tabitha had to pull her husband away by his ear as he grinned, waving us goodbye. Dude, all the characters we meet so far are just so likable. Like, Vincent is so cool. He's a really good character. I like him so much. Another unforeseen blessing was how well Alice and Tabitha hit it off. I was worried she'd be lonely when I started working, but Tabitha had a lot of free time as well and just took care of Lilia, so having Alice around really brightened up her day. Because of this, my wife had great company too, and a source of distraction. Once work started, I was busy training the new recruits. These mages were not the most talented, but they were willing to work hard. After pounding the essentials into their heads, I felt like they'd make a pretty solid team of guards in the course of a few months. Of course, all of the elite mages, both conjurers and augmenters, were attending school at Cyrus Academy, so the ones that didn't want to be adventurers ended up being hired by rich nobles, like Vincent, as guards, which was also much safer. It had been a few months now since Alice and I first arrived in Cyrus. During this time, we were able to slowly grow accustomed to the city life. Alice's belly seemed to be getting larger by the day, and while she still had reoccurring nightmares about losing Arthur, having Tabitha and Lilia around really helped her through that. Just getting back home, I was welcomed by the delicious smell of beef stew. Oh, we're getting to the part. Vincent and Tabitha had gone out on a date while Alice promised to watch over Lilia with the maids, so it was just the two of us having a late dinner tonight, with Lilia already tucked in. This beef stew looks amazing, Alice. What's the special occasion? I grinned at her. She smiled softly. It's been a while since I've cooked for you. This used to be your and Art's favorite dish. Her face turned downcast, but before I had the chance to console her, Hi Mom, hi Dad. It's me, your son Arthur. My mind froze. This was Art's voice. No, I was just hearing things. I looked at Alice while the voice continued to talk in my head. Her face was distraught as she began looking around. Was she hearing voices too? Again, I'm alive and well. Mom and Dad, I managed to survive the fall of the cliff. What is going on? My son is alive. Kingdom of Eleanor. Illness. It may take months or even years for me to be able to go back, but just be sure that I will be going back home. I love you guys so much, and I miss you. Stay safe, and Dad, make sure to keep Mom and my baby sibling safe. Mom, please make sure Dad doesn't get into trouble. Your son, Art. I looked at my wife again. You just heard the voice now too, right, Ray? She blurted, her voice edged with desperation. Please tell me it wasn't just me that heard his voice. Yeah, I just heard Arthur's voice, I replied, unable to still make sense out of all this. He's alive. Honey, our baby is alive. Oh my goodness. Alice had fallen to her knees as her voice trailed off into weeping. She was crying while she wore a smile that told me her tears were from joy. Hell, even I was crying right now. My son was alive. Our son is alive. I laughed out madly. This story is so... the amount of detail that's put into all of the characters and like their emotions and like... oh my god. It's so good. It's so good. I'm happy that they didn't just leave that part out because that was probably one of my favorite parts in like the entire story. Like them realizing Arthur was still alive. Oh my god, it's so good. Oh my god. Okay. Next is chapter 36, excuse me. Next step, part 1. Hey Art, hurry up, we're going to be late. Ah, Tess, stop, I cried out. Tess finally got off of me, letting go of the leg lock she had me in. Oh my god, can't there be a gentler way of waking me up, Tess? I grumbled, massaging the something, right? Besides, you should be grateful that such a pretty lady is waking you up every morning. She fluttered her eyes at me. I find the maids here plenty pretty, thank you very much, I muttered under my breath. She must have heard, because that earned me a firm squeeze on my side. Where did the shy Tess that was too scared to sleep alone at the tent go? The sweet Tess that begged me not to go. Bring her back. I liked her better. Something I realized in my 3 years of living in Eleanor was that elves awakened much earlier than humans did. Whereas the average age for a human is around 13 years old, elves awoke around the age of 10. Wait, so they're 10 now? I thought he got there when he was 4, and then it was 3 years later. Or maybe, let me just keep reading, maybe they'll say something about it. Yeah, no, it has been 3 years, so they're 7. Okay, so 10 was just the average age, I'm guessing, and then Tessia awoke early. No, wait, no, she was like a year or two older than him. So she's probably around like 9 right now. Okay. Tess had awakened fast, even for an elf. It happened last year, and boy did she awaken with a bang. It wasn't as big as when I had first awakened, but she had managed to destroy her room upstairs, fall down, and create a small crater from the implosion in the kitchen right below. Since then, she's been joining me in training with Gramps. All I can say is that since awakening, she's become a lot more confident and bold, and more bad ways than good. She knew how strong my body was, so she had no hesitation in using me as her sandbag as she tried new spells that she learned from Grandpa Varian and other conjurer teachers. What she just didn't seem to get even after all of my cries was that I still felt pain, damn it. As for me, today was a very special day because after 3 years, I was finally able to complete the assimilation of mana into my body. It was almost my birthday, so while Tess had turned 9 a couple of months ago, I'll finally be turning 8. Okay, yeah, so she is 9 right now. Okay. During this time, I wasn't allowed to absorb any mana from my surroundings and was only allowed to use my innate mana, formed from my mana cord, to spread into my body. Today was the final step that took place once a beast tamer finished his assimilation. I skipped showering and just changed into a more presentable robe, tucking the stone into my robe before heading out into the courtyard with Tess. Finally awake now, Brad. How did your wife wake you up today? Ha ha. Grandpa Varian mused as he sipped his tea on the small table outside. Wife, where? I didn't know you could marry demons. You're turning her into a monster, Gramps, I groaned. Luckily, Tess wasn't able to overhear as she came outside just moments after. She's going to grow up into a fine woman, Art. Better sweep her off her feet before it's too late, he chuckled, lifting his teacup in a toast. Tess just blushed at that and elbowed my side. Why? What did I do? Ha ha ha. Art, are you ready? Today is finally the day. After this, you'll be a true beast tamer, not like those lucky adventurers that just have a beast's will, he emphasized, arms crossed. I gave him a firm nod while Tess headed to the table Gramps was sitting at to watch. It wasn't much of a ceremony. All it consisted of was Gramps exerting a large amount of mana into my core. This would trigger a large surge of mana that I would have to direct and spread into my body. Do you remember the basic phases of beast tamers, Art? He quizzed. I recited the basics that Grandpa Varian pounded into me these past years. All beast tamers have a different number of forms that they can will their bodies into. The number of forms is very rare and limited. One of the reasons it took me so long to be able to break into the second phase was because I am a force tamer. Interesting. I never knew that. That's cool. I consider myself lucky to even be able to break into the second stage, though. Arthur, you're one of the extremely rare legacy tamers, where the beast willingly imparted its will into you. Continuing on, he explained, my first phase doesn't really make me that much faster, but I'm able to erase a bit of my presence and blend myself into the shadows. You haven't seen my second phase, right? Watch carefully. It took me over 10 years for me to make a breakthrough into this phase. Feeling a powerful surge of mana surrounding his body, I couldn't help but involuntarily cringe. All of a sudden, the mana around his body seeped back into him, and my eyes widened. Grandpa's skin turned pitch black. Even the whites of his eyes became black, while his irises turned sharp and glowed yellow. His dyed white hair became unbound. It was also a shiny black color. The aura that surrounded him made me shudder and take a step back. This is the integrate phase. I'm going to sneak up behind you. Pay attention, he growled, his voice much raspier than before. Was it really sneaking up if he tells me? Was what I was thinking when he disappeared from my vision. I couldn't feel his presence at all, but when I looked behind me as I had been told to do, his finger was already pressed against my jugular as he looked down at me with his glowing yellow eyes. So fast. Or was in anime they'd be like, hi. It seemed like I almost said instant transmission, oh my god. It seemed like instant teleportation, but I knew it wasn't by the skid mark from his initial position. It was speed that even I couldn't keep up with, not even close. No, the scary part wasn't even his insane speed, it was his lack of presence. Even directly behind me, I couldn't sense where he was. He turned back to normal, his face slightly flushed as Tess began clapping as if this was a show. Whew, using that form always takes a toll on me. After training with it for a couple of decades, I'm able to keep the form on for a bit less than an hour. During my acquire phase, I'm simply channeling a small portion of my beast's will, and I'm able to borrow the speed and stealth of the Shadow Panther. However, with my integrate phase, not only did my speed and stealth rise, so did my senses to keep up. I nodded in agreement. Good, let's begin the ceremony, he replied, clasping his hands together. We stood face to face, only an arm's length apart. Tess was now leaning forward in excitement as we were about to start. Just let your mana come out freely. Don't try to control anything. I will strain you if necessary, so it's crucial that you keep a relaxed state of mind and rouse the particles of mana you've assimilated all these years, he instructed. After a nod in response, he then began exerting mana into my core, flooding my core with his mana along with mine. Instantly I began feeling a warm sensation, like a hot gust of air was flying in and out of my pores. As I felt my body reaching its limit, a loud explosion startled me out of my concentration, only for me to see Gramps getting thrown back and Tess falling back in her chair and rolling back as well. An unbearable pain immediately surged from my body, as if my very skeleton was trying to crawl out of my skin. Without even the strength to scream, my vision darkens. I welcomed the darkness because I knew it would relieve me from my pain. Looks like Renia was right. Just naming it a double S-class beast was like an understatement. A huge one, in fact. Anyways, next chapter. Chapter 37. Next step. Part 2. Waking up back in my bed, I sat up, feeling surprisingly refreshed. Sitting to my side, laying her head down on my legs, was Tess. Looking at her sleeping like this, it reminded me of when I had escorted her back home after saving her from the slave traders. Grandpa Varian walked in soon after, and he sat down on the other side of the bed, not bothering to wake up his slumbering granddaughter. How do you feel, Brad? His lips curl up into a half grin. I should be asking you that, Gramps. I saw you get sent flying. Even Tess was knocked back. He let out an embarrassed chuckle. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting that great of a force. I know you probably have a good reason for not even telling me what kind of beast gave you its role, but I'll ask this one more time. In all my life, I've never thought I'd be able to see the birth of a dragon tamer. I'm even the one that trained him. A dragon tamer. Tess woke up from the now senile Virion and looked at him confused. He suddenly grabbed both of my shoulders and looked at me intently. You did right in keeping this a secret. Do not tell anyone else. This power of yours has to be kept a secret until you have the strength to protect yourself and those around you. I'm beginning to believe that more and more, Gramps. I responded seriously. Good. Although I would like to know the whole story, I'm more than satisfied with what you told me for now. He smiled back. What is it, Gramps? What did Art tell you? Not fair, keeping secrets from me. Tess started pouting at this point. You'll know when the time is right, little one. Arthur, I have good news. The teleportation gate that is supposed to open in 2 years will be opening early. There's a tournament that will be held in the city of Cyrus in 4 months. This tournament will be a very important event for the future because both the dwarves and elves are sending youth as representatives for both the tournament and as preliminary students to your human academy. During the tournament, we can sneak you back into Sapin without humans knowing at the time. Gramps exclaimed with a smile on his sharp face. Really, Gramps? I can go home soon. I shot out of bed. I will finally be able to see my parents again. I had been sending messages to my parents every once in a while through Eldorenia, but after seeing them through the water divination technique, I wasn't able to see them again. You're going to be leaving soon, Art? Tess asked, her face crestfallen. Yeah, I have to meet my family soon. Don't worry, though. I'll visit you again. And maybe you can come visit me in Sapin, I said, hoping to cheer her up. We still have 4 months, Arthur, until the day the teleportation gates open. I expect you to train harder than before, Brad. Your mana core hasn't developed at all these past 3 years from the assimilation you had to do. Don't focus on only training your beast's will. That should only be used as a trump card. Understood? He was right. Although I had yet to activate even the acquire phase of my dragon will, I knew that using it would only bring unwanted attention. I shouldn't use my beast's will if possible. Continuing, Grandpa slapped my back and said, Now, take a bath and then rest. You reek of something rotten, Brad. Little one, let's leave Arthur alone so he can recuperate. I noticed Tess still looking depressed by the sudden news of my leaving. Growing up and living with her for 3 years had given us a bond that was close to siblings, and while she was only 9 years old, the fact that she was already showing signs of blossoming into a beautiful woman did make me feel a twinge of regret that I wouldn't be here with her as she grew up. Tess, cheer up, okay? I'll still be around for a few more months, and even after I leave, it's not going to be permanent. I hope you can someday come and meet my parents too. I gave her a sincere hug. Eep, what are you? I can almost see the steam coming out of her head as she turned bright red. Suddenly she pushed me away and ran out. Youth. Sleep well, Brad. He chuckled, shaking his head while closing the door behind him. were sharp slits that would normally make it look menacing, but with the body of something akin to a small feline animal, it just looked adorable. The most notable difference between a dragon like Sylvia and this little thing was that it had two horns on its head. The horns looked identical to the illusion that Sylvia had embodied before she revealed to me that she was a dragon. They curved outward around its head and then sharpened it to a point in the front. Its head was shaped like a cat's, but the snout was just a little bit more pointed, otherwise the same. The tail, though, looked exactly like Sylvia's tail. It was a reptilian tail that had two red spikes at the end. Along the spine of this hatchling were also small red spikes that matched the color of its eyes. It didn't have wings, but where the wings should be located were, instead, two small bumps. Okay, so her appearance is a lot different compared to how it is in the comic, like when she was first born. That's interesting. I could see that its belly didn't have scales, though. It looked sort of leathery. The newly hatched creature suddenly let out a toothless yawn, toppling on its back after losing balance, and in response, I was flushed with the overwhelming urge to embrace this creature. Cute. It locked its sharp eyes on me with intelligence that didn't match its appearance. Hi there, little fella. I'm Arthur. I stretched my hand out towards it as if it were a dog that needed to know my scent. Cute. It jumped off the chair and onto my lap, gazing up at me. I could feel my hands twitch as I suppressed the urge to squeeze it. Unlike the majesty and fearsomeness that Sylvia had, this creature was dangerous in a different sense. Unable to hold in the urge, I carefully petted the adorable menace. The scales were surprisingly soft, and the red spikes that ran down his back felt like rubber. I guess young animals, whether humans or monsters, were all squishy and soft. It started purring, closing its eyes. I could feel the tension on my face melt as I let out a soft laugh. It rolled onto its back, asking for a more thorough rub. The belly felt like a very soft leather, making it very smooth to rub. I took a closer look at its claws, and found it interesting that they looked closer to paws than actual claws. The only thing that was hard were its horns, which were surprisingly sharp as well. I couldn't help but compare them to the beak of a bird. To the beak a bird would use to crack itself out of its shell. Aren't you just a cute little fella? My smile widened while petting this adorable newborn to the point where it seemed intoxicating. After a little bit, I couldn't help but think of what to name it, which made me realize I didn't even know the gender of this mysterious creature. Suddenly, the newborn shot its tongue out and licked the underside of my left forearm. I reflexively tried to move my arm back from the scorching sensation, but before I could, a glowing black light began enveloping my arm. The prickling pain subsided fairly quickly, so I just waited. The creature pulled its tongue back, revealing a black marking on my forearm. It looked a lot like the tribal markings that covered Sylvia before she passed on her will to me, but the shape of this pattern was that of a wing. Just one open wing, but it was made up of several dashes and sharp curves that branched out, making it look very intricate and mysterious. I'm only 8, but I already have a tattoo. I'm such a rebel. Mama. The creature looked up at me with its mouth closed. What? I obviously heard a voice just now. Mama. This time I heard it clearly in my head. Was this telepathy? Shaking my head helplessly, I responded vocally. I guess I'm your mother, but I'm a boy, so you should call me Papa. Papa! It suddenly jumped up and licked my nose. I'm a rebel with a tattoo and a child. After communicating with the creature for a bit, I had come to realize a few things. I guess after the mark had appeared on my forearm, a sort of telepathic connection was established. The voice I heard in my head from the creature sounded like a girl's, so I decided to name her Sylvie after her real mother. Sylvie, she responded with her head tilted. Picking her up and bringing her close to my face, I smiled at her. That's right, your name is Sylvie. She nuzzled her nose to mine while closing her sharp eyes. Another thing I realized was that Sylvie had a pretty high intellect for a newborn. have the mental capacity of a toddler. While we communicated telepathically, I knew she wasn't necessarily talking to me in English, but I just understood it as that. It was a very odd feeling not knowing the words she was actually saying, but knowing what she meant. Besides simple words like Papa, most of the thoughts she communicated came through as emotions. I was able to get the gist of what she meant by how she felt. Okay, Sylvie, I need to wash now. Do you want to come with me? I said while setting her down. Cute. She tilted her head again while she looked up at me. I felt like she was asking me what wash was, so I just laughed and took her with me. Getting into the shower, she seemed to cry out, "No," as she wailed, a shrill cue. I guess you don't like water that much, do you, Sylvie? I chuckled, setting her down and out the shower. Sylvie shook herself off like a wet dog and plopped down on the floor next to the shower, her tail wagging, observing me as I finished washing up. Her behavior sort of reminded me of a mix between a dog and a cat. Never would I imagine her lineage to be that of a mighty dragon. Of course, this was assuming that she was actually Sylvia's child. That got me thinking, though. Was Sylvie really a dragon? She sure looked kinda like a baby dragon. Why was she completely black when Sylvia was pure white? What baffled me the most was the fact that Sylvie had horns, eerily similar to that of the horned Demon King illusion that Sylvia was at first, and also to that of the demon that confronted her. I got out of the shower and dried myself off. No use thinking about all this now. How was I going to explain this to Gramps and Tess, though? As I got out of the bathroom, Sylvie toddled behind me, cueing me to not leave her behind. I gathered up the pieces of the shell that Sylvie came out from and set it aside. Then I wrapped the feather that encased the stone around my forearm to cover the marking that little Sylvia had left. 4 months. In 4 months I would be able to see my parents. I wonder if they'd still recognize me. Sylvie must have felt the longing emotion from my parents because she cuddled in close to my face and licked my cheeks. Thanks, little Sylv. Petting her horned head, I fell asleep. I was waiting for her to show up. I love Sylvie so much. She's so adorable. She's like, Varian's one of my favorite characters, and so is Sylvie. She's so adorable. Oh my god. Okay. Next chapter. Beginning. Oh yeah, chapter 39, Companion Part 2. I was about to read out the title of the damn book. If you heard that, that was my stomach, and I apologize. Kia, what is it? What happened? Who's there? I jumped up on my bed using my pillow as a makeshift sword, bed hair ablaze. Oh my gosh, what is this? It's so cute. I turned my attention to Tess, who was holding onto the squirming Sylvie. Cute, she cried. Papa, help. Letting out a defeated breath, I fell back into bed. Come back, my beautiful sleep. Her name is Sylvie, and she just hatched from her shell yesterday. You should let go of her, though. It looks like she doesn't like being strangled. I muffled through the pillow that I'd covered my head with. It was too early in the morning. Sylvie had finally freed herself from Tess's grasp and was glaring at her while she hid herself behind me. Grrr. Sylvie let out a high-pitched growl. Don't worry, Sylv. She's a friend, I said while petting her head. Giving up on going back to sleep. She's adorable. Tess was literally drooling over my cautious hatchling. I could see hearts coming out of her eyes as she inched herself closer to us, her hands twitching lewdly like a predator's. Okay, now you just look scary, Tess. Get out of my room so I can change, I instructed while pushing the perverted princess out of my room. I changed into a loose robe and pants as I was putting on my shoes. Sylvie jumped onto my head and nestled herself, hitching herself a ride. Cute. She sure sounded happy. I walked downstairs, saying good morning to the confused and shocked maids that couldn't take their eyes off the top of my head. They all ended up having the same expression as Tess, though. I ended up having to pick up my pace as I started fearing for our safety. Gramps, we're here. I shouted at Varian, who was sipping tea while reading something. Turning his head, he smiled. Aren't you here? Why was Tess fussing about some sort of pet that... His cup dropped when he noticed the horned black lump sitting on my head. That's... I continued to stutter something incomprehensible. make sense out of the creature on my head, finally spoke up. If that really is a dragon, how did you come across an egg? How did you get it to hatch? The dragon that left me her will entrusted me with a stone that I thought was just a valuable gem. I didn't even realize what it actually was until it hatched. What did you mean by get it to hatch? I was confused now as well. Supposedly, dragon's eggs, assuming it really is one, aren't able to hatch just through the passage of time. It is said that the dragon inside must feel that something capable of protecting and loving it was close by in order for it to hatch. Even then, there must be a very close bond between them, he explained. Trying to think of what might have triggered the hatching, I almost immediately came to the conclusion. Activating the will. I think that's what made her come out, I exclaimed. He scratched his chin, slowly nodding. That is a viable explanation. The draconic races haven't been seen for hundreds of years, with only limited records of them, so I can't say for sure. No use thinking about it now, though. Just be sure to keep the hatchling close by at all times. Well, it does look very much like a creature of the draconic races. I would be one of the only few that would be able to make that connection. Most people wouldn't know that creature was a dragon, so it should be fine by just feigning it off as a sort of rare mana beast. After that matter was settled, I placed Sylvie on the ground beside me while I began training. I gotta love Sylvie. Okay, Chapter 40, Companion, Part 3. The next step in my training for the next 4 months would be learning to utilize the power of Sylvia's will as she left me, as well as condensing my mana core into the next stages. Accessing the first phase is simple, yet may take a lifetime if comprehension of your beast's will does not come naturally. While your mana core is only dark red, your body right now should already be beyond that of a dark orange stage mage. After the ceremony, you should feel a small area inside of your mana core that holds the will's power. That is where your beast will is stored. Accessing the acquired stage should occur through your own learning, not through being taught. From my experience, the best way to trigger your beast will is to continuously be in combat. Makes sense to me, I replied, already stretching my body. Good, then let's fight, he instructed with a confident smirk on his face. The days went by quickly for me as I was completely immersed in training. I was able to access my first phase, but I wouldn't be able to use it in an actual fight until I gained more control over it. Varian also taught me how to conceal my beast's will so other mages wouldn't notice. After the assimilation, the speed of my mana cultivation went through leaps and bounds. During this time, there didn't seem to be any changes in Sylvie, except that she had gotten a little more intelligent. Her vocabulary was still limited, but it was a lot easier for us to understand each other. I also went out together with Tess a lot. She had dragged me out with her during any free time we had, trying to make as many memories as possible before I left. Like that, the 4 months that seemed so far away had now passed. Dressed in a simple olive green long sleeve shirt and black pants with the feather wrapped around my forearm, I came out of my room. Arthur, remember to take care. We'll find some way to contact and update you. Take this with you so you can navigate through the forest of Elshire if you're ever in the area. Or maybe you can just find another way back, another princess to lead you back. He winked while handing me a small silver oval compass. Grandpa. Ouch, little one, it was a joke. Grandpa Varian yelped while rubbing his side. While Alduin and Muriel will be going in a separate carriage as the heads of this kingdom, Tess and I won't be going. This will be the last time we'll see each other for now. Until next time, Arthur. He grabbed me in a strong hug, almost knocking Sylvie off my head. I'll miss you, Art. Remember to come visit again. Don't go chasing after human girls, okay? Promise me, okay? She sniffled, tears lining her eyes. I hugged my dear friend and patted her head as well. We'll see each other again. You better be stronger than me the next time we meet, Tess. With Grams teaching you, you have no excuses. She gave me a feeble nod, unable to form words because of her constant sniffling. I waved goodbye to the both of them and followed behind Mariel and Alduin after they gave me a sympathetic smile. I hadn't really gotten the chance to spend much time with the king and queen, but we were more comfortable with each other now. I hoped that next time I would be able to grow closer to them. I got into the carriage that the elf representatives were taking, while the king and queen were escorted into a separate carriage. Well, look who it is, if it isn't the human Sylvie was growling, pointing her horns in his direction. I'm the noble you mercilessly attacked while defying the customs of the duel. He bolted up angrily, pointing an accusing finger at me. It suddenly clicked. You're the bug I sent tumbling. I yelled out at realization, a bit louder than I had meant to. You dare! His face turned bright pink as his ears twitched profusely in anger, while a few elves behind him desperately tried to cover their snickering. Sorry. I didn't mean to say that. I never did learn your name, though. I chuckled, extending a hand to him. Face still red and trying to preserve as much of the little dignity he had left, he rejected my handshake and declared in a pompous tone, My name is Faerith Ivesar III, descendant of the noble Ivesar family. You may have won while we were both children, but were we to duel again, I would win easily. A young elf girl that looked a few years older than Faerith piped in, saying, You can just call him Fei like we do. Don't tell him that. Face turning an even darker shade of red, Fei turned his head away from me and took a seat. I sat down next to Fei and gave him a sympathetic pat on his shoulders that were slumped in defeat. As our carriage went into the teleportation gate, we were greeted by the now familiar sensation of being in the middle of a fast-forwarding film. We have arrived in Xyrus, the driver announced. Taking a quick peek out, I noticed we were surrounded by a parade of people all politely clapping at our entrance. This tournament was supposed to be one of the biggest turning points throughout the continent. It wasn't just gathering all of the gifted youths together, but also building a future where they could also learn under one roof. It was an exciting venture that the leaders of the continent were taking, but also a scary one that would also, no doubt, be filled with dispute and hostility. The driver pulled the carriage close to a small gap between two buildings after passing through the crowd and signaled to me in the back that this would be the best time to leave without being noticed. I said bye to Fei and the rest of the representatives and wished them luck. Fei merely whipped his head away, but also made a slight waving gesture. Jumping off the carriage with Sylvie still on my head, I made my way through the alleyways. I tried remembering the home my parents were staying in. After around an hour of making my way around, I finally managed to find the huge manor where my parents were supposed to be residing. We're home now, Sylv. We're finally home, I muttered shakily under my breath. Q, she said as if to say, I thought we were at home before. I took careful steps walking up the flight of stairs and took one deep breath. Dusting off my shirt and pants, I knocked on the giant double doors. He's finally home. Oh, he's finally home. My boy finally made it back to his parents. Oh my god. The story just keeps getting better and better. Like, I don't think there was ever, like when I was reading the comic and also reading the novel, I don't think there was ever a boring part in this story. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, there have been a few slow parts, like in the recent chapters of the novel, but they weren't boring at all. It just felt slow because, you know, weekly updates and whatnot. But, man, the emotion, the joy, the characters, it's so good. I highly suggest you guys read it for yourself if you don't want to wait for me to read it to you every week. But if you do stick with me through this, I greatly appreciate it. And if you've made it this far into the video, I also greatly appreciate that. Man, I'm gonna stay consistent with this. I love it so much. Sitting here reading for almost 2 hours is kind of, like reading out loud for almost 2 hours is kind of tough, but I can do it if it's for